Our world is filled with natural wonders. As with other naturalists fueled with curiosity, I've endeavored to understand as much as I can about these wonders. A timeless and invaluable tool that most naturalists use is a journal. A journal not only helps the naturalist to reflect upon his observations, but protects the observations from the human memory, which is notorious for distorting and neglecting details. I am passionate about my studies and love to share with anybody willing to engage. This is why I create and share my nature journal.
Too,
He's obviously cooking with not our goose friend.
It was another pretty good week for birds. We had an immature bald eagle stop in. And that same day, we saw 2 broad-winged hawks flying over. Over at Wick's Pond, a pair of red-winged blackbirds have begun nesting. Often when we identify birds, we identify them by the sounds they make. With certain birds, such as the red-eyed vireo, you're lucky to even get this quick glimpse that we got. But many birds this week seem to cooperate perfectly. Here's a Baltimore oriole singing its variable but distinctively melodious song. Here's another oriole singing. And here's one doing its chatter. And here's the American redstart. This warbler usually has a song of 5 or 6 notes ending in an upward or downward inflection. Male redstarts, such as this one, are black on top, white underneath, with orange patches on the sides, wings, and tail. Female redstarts look similar, but are grayer on top and have yellow patches rather than orange. Behavioral traits can be a good field mark for this species. They tend to flit around and catch insects on the wing, rather than pick them out of the bark and tree flowers as other warblers do. This male is displaying, flashing his colors, fanning his tail, and singing loudly. The males display for a couple of reasons. One, they're displaying to other males to show that they hold the territory, and second, they're displaying to females to let them know that they're available. Sometimes the male redstart will only take one mate, but it's not uncommon for him to take 2 or 3 female mates. The females do build the nest, but the male will help each of them to raise the broods. American redstarts are one of the more common warblers of eastern North America because of the habitat that they prefer. They nest in second-growth forests, often near the edges or in openings in the canopy, such as along riversides or where a tree has fallen. This preference for nesting habitat does, however, make them susceptible to cowbirds. Cowbirds are parasitic nesters, meaning they'll lay their eggs in the nests of other species, leaving those parents to raise their chicks. Another breeding warbler, recently back from tropical Central America, is the magnolia warbler. This warbler is bright yellow with a black mask and bold black streaking on the chest. And of course, there's the black-throated green warbler. This is a female. She doesn't have the black throat that the breeding males do. Another neotropic migrant passing through, some of which will be staying to breed, are the scarlet tanagers. Only the males are actually scarlet though. The females look very similar to the males, but are overall a dull yellowish green. Scarlet tanagers are fairly common, but often remain high in the canopy, concealed by leaves. They will nest in smaller patches of forest, but are much more successful in large forests. This is because if they are too close to an opening, they too are susceptible to cowbird nest parasitism. There seems to be a lot of propaganda promoting selective logging, including from the New York Department of Environmental Conservation. Although selective logging is not nearly as destructive as clear cutting, it still has a harmful impact on the environment. It harms woodland nesting birds and also allows invasive species to come in and foreign diseases.
Another tanager.
The wood thrush is another woodland nester. And like most other woodland nesters, it too is susceptible to cowbird nest parasitism. Wood thrush populations are relatively high, but declining. The decline, inarguably, is due to forest fragmentation in the north, which again makes them susceptible to cowbirds, and also habitat loss in their wintering grounds in the tropics of Central America. Some people do speculate that there is another contributing factor to their decline. This would be their cousins, the American robin. For many years, robins found their niche nesting in suburban parks and yards, as many people know. But in recent years, it seems that robin populations are growing and pushing farther and farther into the woodlands, displacing the wood thrushes in their nesting sites. Off the sanctuary, on the barge canal, somewhere between Marcy and Rome, there were some spotted sandpipers. Unlike most other sandpipers, spotted sandpipers rarely are seen in flocks together. The three I did see were probably spread out all within a half-mile distance of each other. Notice on the spotted sandpiper the black stripes through the eye and the white supercilium above the eye. Their chest is spotted during the breeding season, but after breeding it's all white and the back turns a little more grayish. One of the most obvious identification marks, even from a long distance, is the incessant bobbing of the tail. And it looks like this one is sitting on a nest. They do have interesting breeding habits. It's the females who are larger and more aggressive and hold a territory. Within that territory, she will often breed multiple males. Then, after she lays the clutch of eggs for each male, it's the male's responsibility to incubate and rear the offspring. Also off the sanctuary, from my porch in Whitesboro, there were some house sparrows mating. I believe they're working on their second brood for the season. I thought it was cute that the male would hop over her every time before mounting. We've had a fair number of lepidopterans show up this week. Here is the white-striped black moth, nectaring on a dandelion. I read that they use jewelweed as their host plant for their eggs and larvae. We do have loads of jewelweed here at the sanctuary, but it is still small. It makes me question that source of information. And here's the eastern tiger swallowtail butterfly, also nectaring on a dandelion. Many people consider dandelions weeds and try to remove them from their yards. But they are an important food source for many insects and can attract other wildlife attracted to those insects. The eastern tiger swallowtail utilizes broadleaf trees as its host plant, especially trees of the poplar, cherry, and birch families. We can expect to see more of these throughout the summer. Freshly awakened from their winter hibernation are the eastern comma butterflies. The eastern comma prefers the edges of woodlands or streams running through woods. These butterflies are often found on the ground, sitting in patches of dirt or sand, and they stay well camouflaged when they keep their wings closed.
Magnolia.
They will also perch on tree trunks, and when they open their wings, you can see they're a dirty orange with distinct patterns of black spots. The host plants that the eastern comma uses, at least around here, are members of the nettle family and the elm trees.
I guess we have two tendencies because he's not singing.
And lastly, we have the pearl crescent butterfly. This was one of our most common butterflies last year, so we're expecting to see more as the season progresses. One afternoon, while walking past Wick's Pond, I noticed two snapping turtles. And they seemed to be going at it pretty intensely. I watched them for close to an hour, and when I talked to Matt later, He said he saw the same activity happening earlier that morning at around 7:30. This means they were going at it for at least 6 hours. Of course, they did take breaks intermittently. My first thought was that this was mating behavior, some sort of courtship ritual. But at one point, I noticed both turtles seemed to be trying to get on top of each other and drown the other. Then I thought it was a territorial dispute. After some research, I found that the female does fight back very hard against the male, often not even allowing him to mate. This likely ensures that only the strongest males will be able to fertilize her eggs. Snapping turtles are slow-growing and long-lived. It may take a snapping turtle 15 to 20 years to reach the age of sexual maturity. Snapping turtles do not have a breeding season. They can breed throughout the year, except in colder places like New York, where they hibernate for the winter. But even then, they'll breed any time between spring and fall. If the male does succeed in breeding the female snapping turtle, she can then store his sperm in her body for months at end, maybe even over a year, waiting until the time is right to let her eggs be fertilized. Once the female finds a suitable place, a patch of loose, often sandy soil, she will dig her nest, which resembles an upside-down light bulb, and deposit the eggs. A typical clutch is usually between 30 and 50 eggs. The rate of hatching is weather dependent, and if she lays them in the fall, they will overwinter and emerge sometime the next spring. Even if only one of those hatchling turtles survive into adulthood, that is considered a great success. Eventually, they ended up in this position. It looks to me like a successful mating. They're not positioned with the plastron against the carapace, as the textbooks say they should be. But when it comes to animal behavior, nothing is 100% absolute. Our mission at Spring Farm Cares Nature Sanctuary is to protect wildlife and enhance habitat around central New York. We thank everybody for supporting us, and if anyone has any questions, comments, would like to learn more, or schedule a tour with us, please check out our website or find us on Facebook.